Hey everyone, take a look at this thing. I'm sure you'll never guess what it's for. You can even pause the video right now, write your guess, and find out at the end if you are right or not. Although it's pretty unlikely since this DIY creation is the product of my twisted imagination. Today, I'm going to show you probably the most complicated way to solve a simple problem. Just don't be too hard on me, because I'm one of those people who likes to complicate everything. The video is going to be interesting, so don't go anywhere. The story that led to the creation of this DIY project started a few months ago when I had accumulated quite a few cool 3D printers, and my wife decided to get into 3D printing. Specifically, she started making all sorts of toys, keychains, and so on. Keychains are pretty popular, and there's nothing complicated about making them. You just print a monochrome or color model, then you buy some fasteners with chains, heat the fastener with a lighter, and melt it into the plastic keychain model. That's the classic way. That's how everyone does it. My wife was fine with that, but I wasn't. The fastener's tiny, so you have to hold it with tweezers in one hand and a lighter in the other, then heat it up and quickly melt it in. This thing isn't very big. It has very low heat capacity, so you have to act fast before it cools down. If you rush, you might melt it and crook it, or even in the wrong spot. Basically, it's like caveman technology. So I sat down and thought about how to make this process easier. My initial idea was simple, to create a combined lighter tweezers tool so you could work with just one hand. But in that case, the problem of the piece cooling down too quickly would still be there, plus a bunch of other issues would come up. Then I remembered that I'm a bit of an electronics guy after all, so the device should match that. The second option is to heat the fastener using eddy currents. Yeah, an induction heater. But it quickly turned out that these things are made of non-magnetic metal, so the induction heater idea was scrapped. And the third method is heating by short-circuiting. A million years ago, I made a bunch of pulse soldering irons, where the tip is basically a shorted loop, and that's why it heats up. So why not use the same principle here? I spent quite a while thinking about the design since there are some features related to optimal operation. The device should allow you to work quickly, conveniently, and efficiently. The main criteria were as follows. Grabbing and embedding the fastener should take minimal time and be simple, without any extra movements like when using tweezers. Grab it, embed it, release it. No extra locks or holders. Heating should be as fast as possible. The device should be comfortable and relatively lightweight. And since I don't like devices that have to be plugged into an outlet, I decided to make the device autonomous. Plus, it'll be much more convenient for the end user this way. And there are some additional criteria. The device must definitely be powered by a single lithium battery, preferably the 18650 standard. Let's get back to our project. As the basis, I used my own development, the iron mask pulse soldering iron, which was just slightly simplified and optimized for the new task. So, about the design. To reduce the size and weight, almost all the components are SMD. The printed circuit board is double-sided and was made at home using a laser laminator technique. It's like the toner transfer method, only instead of an iron, you use a regular laminator. It's also important to note that some components present on the board are not shown in the schematic. These are mainly various power supply capacitors. This was done to simplify the schematic. Even though the board is double-sided, it's actually pretty simple, since the second side is just a few power planes. By the way, the board isn't from the future, I just got the year wrong. If I had the chance to quickly order factory-made boards, believe me, I would have reduced the final board size by at least 2 or even 3 times by using double-sided mounting and smaller SMD components. But with home technology, it's tricky to do chemical plating holes, so I try to use as few vias as possible. The vias themselves are made with regular copper wire, which is inserted into the required hole and soldered on both sides. Yes, the process isn't easy, so it's better to trust a company like NextPCB with this kind of task. It's a huge factory that can produce printed circuit boards of any complexity, size, and number of layers, within reason, of course. They offer a wide selection of copper trace thicknesses, solder mask colors, and trace finishes. Flexible payment and delivery options. The boards themselves can be manufactured in the shortest possible time. All you need to do is upload the original Gerber files for your board, select the necessary options, pay, and wait for delivery. In addition, the company can produce both flexible boards and aluminum-based boards, among many other options. There's an online Gerber viewer on the website. Before production, you can also double-check your board. As always, you'll find the link to NextPCD in the description. The schematic. It consists of several separate modules. a battery protection board, a charging system, a small DC-DC boost converter, and the main power converter. And let's start perhaps with the last one. In fact, this is a push-pull voltage converter based on the advanced PWM controller SG3525, which controls the MOSFET transistors. Those, in turn, drive the power pulse transformer, whose secondary winding consists of one or a couple of turns of thick wire with a tip serving as the load. In this case, the tip is actually the fastener itself, so it's not fixed but rather interchangeable, and we need to come up with the best way to grip and release it. But more on that later. Our supply voltage is very low. The PWM controller simply won't start from it. That's why the circuit includes an additional low-power voltage converter, 12 to 15 volts, which provides the necessary voltage to power the PWM controller and properly control the switches. Yes, there are other controllers that can operate at such low voltages, and you can use switches with logic level control, but I preferred a tried-and-true design. This small converter is built on the good old MT3068 chip. Thanks to this solution, the whole setup can operate reliably, even when the lithium battery is almost discharged. Another important point is that the circuit includes a trimmer resistor, which actually adjusts the heating power by changing the duration of the control pulses. So after assembly, we set up the converter so that the fastener heats up to a temperature high enough to melt plastic, but not so much that it overheats or loses its shine. Convenient, right? It is convenient. After adjustment, the trimmer resistor is desoldered, its resistance is measured, and it's replaced with a fixed resistor. The converter can heat not only this kind of fastener, but pretty much anything, or rather, anything that's made of metal. The finished device also includes a lithium battery charging system, which is built around the equally old and reliable TP4056 chip. And honestly, that's all you really need here. Given that the device only operates for short periods, a full charge will last a very long time. There are two indicator LEDs that show the charging status. There's also a protection board, or BMS. How could you go without it? Again, it's all classic stuff here. A DW01 controller and N-channel MOSFETs. The BMS system is designed for a fairly high current and protects the battery from deep discharge, overcharge, and short circuits. One of the most important parts of the device is the power transformer. It's wound on a standard E-shaped magnetic core with a permeability of 2000. It's important to note that in this converter topology, there's no need for a gap between the halves of the magnetic core. The primary winding consists of 4 turns with a center tap. This time, I didn't use Litz wire for winding, but a copper strip instead. Such a transformer will have the highest quality factor. The strip is 11 millimeters wide and 0.2 millimeters thick, with a cross-section of about 2.2 square millimeters. The taps are made with stranded copper wire, and the strip itself is insulated with Kapton tape. The secondary winding is the same kind of strip, only doubled, and consists of just 1 turn. The currents in it will be enormous and depend on the resistance of the tooling and the set power. Flexible 12 AW wires and silicone heat-resistant insulation are used for current collection. For grip in the workpiece, I have these alligator clips, which are used for 4-wire measurements. Their jaws are not closed, and they're made of thick brass. Very convenient. You grab the workpiece, press the button, the workpiece heats up, release the button, and the heating stops. By the way, the button is not a power switch. It supplies power to the input of a low-power converter based on the Mount 3608 and starts the PWM controller. The secondary winding of the transformer is soldered directly to the jaws of this alligator clip. Regarding the power supply, during the development stage, before creating the converter, I heated the workpiece using this method and got a rough idea of the maximum power I would need for the converter. I settled on 40 watts of output power, and taking efficiency into account, let's say roughly 90%, which is about right here since there's no output rectifier and therefore no losses from it. The input power will be about 45 watts. Let's round it up to 50 watts. Our power source is 3.7 volts, and considering the power, it will draw currents of about 13 to 14 amps. But if the battery is almost discharged at 3 or 2.8 volts, the current will reach 17 to 18 amps. Overall, any high-drain battery can supply this kind of current, and even those that aren't particularly high-drain. Considering that the converter only operates for a short time, just a few seconds, ideally, you should spot weld a copper or nickel strip to the battery and solder it to the board. But I used a holder to allow for quick battery replacement. They aren't designed for such currents over a long period. They seem to handle it for short bursts, but it's not the best solution. The Type-C charging port is on a separate board. In principle, I could have placed it on the main device board, but if it broke, it would have torn off the traces. This way, if something happens, you can just throw out this module and replace it with another one. The port's securely fastened to the device board with 2 screws. Setup. After fully assembling and checking the wiring, you need to power up the device. Each module is checked separately. At this stage, all components are soldered onto the board except for the power transformer. First, connect only the specified wire. The power wire for the converter should not be connected yet. Check the BMS board. You can create a short circuit at the output, and the protection should trigger instantly. This almost certainly means that the other functions of the BMS system are working as well. Next, check the output voltage of the Mount 3608 converter. It should be around 13 to 14 volts. Then check the charging, and with that, the main part of the work is done. After that, connect the specified wire, which will supply power to the main PWM controller. The power converter will start up at this point. Make sure that there's a clean signal with sufficient amplitude on the gates of the power transistors, and that this signal is the same for both sides. If for some reason you decided to replicate this design and have made it to this stage, then congratulations on successfully launching the build. You're almost done. The finished build works perfectly. The heating is very fast. You can actually make it almost instantaneous by adjusting the resistance of this resistor, thereby increasing the power of the converter. But if you overdo it, the workpiece will heat up quickly and might even melt. For now, this build doesn't have its own case, so temporarily, and that means permanently, it'll just be wrapped in heat shrink tubing. Maybe in the future, I'll design and 3D print a simple case for it. I just need to overcome my laziness first. I know there will be a bunch of simpler ideas for solving the original problem in the comments, but this is how it turned out for me. Besides, the good thing is that this is a ready-made, standalone, instant heating pulse soldering iron. You just need to use a tip made from a piece of thick copper wire instead of this thing, and that's it. You can also use nichrome wire as the tip and get a device for cutting plastic, or, for example, make a hot stapler for repairing plastic items, bumpers, and so on. Basically, there are tons of ways you can use it, and the design itself doesn't need to be changed, only the attachments are swapped out. So the video about a complicated solution to a simple problem is coming to an end. Let me remind you that the full project archive with the schematic, PCB, and so on, as always, can be found in the video description. And if you liked it, don't forget to comment, rate the video, and if you have time, share it with your friends. That's all from me. As always, this was Kaziana Khan with you. See you next time. Bye.